Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, I'm showcasing an early look at the brand new Shadow Legendary Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, Shadow Cresselia. Now we know that the Cresselia in its regular form is top open Great League meta with the moveset of Psycho Cut, Grass Knot, and your choice of Moonblast or Future Sight. Today, I'm going to be testing out the Shadow to see can it live up to the very lofty standards of the non-Shadow Cresselia. Since the Open Great League isn't currently in rotation, I'm going to be showcasing some Open Great League practice battles with members of my Discord. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches, and let's take a look at Shadow Cresselia in the Open Great League. Hopping to the first match, picking up a pretty neutral lead, Annihilate versus Goodra. I'm going to strike first with an Night Slash bait and grab a shield from my opponent. I can survive an Aqua Tail or a Thunder Punch here, they do the same amount of damage, so I will be able to tank that move, and I'm just going to fire off this Night Slash right away. I don't want to risk the potential Dragon Breath down, I'll just get the damage that I can, and now I can go for farm with Lickitung. Lickitung able to get that farm down, in comes Talonflame, and I'm extremely happy to see the Talonflame here, because my Cresselia I chose to run Grass Knot and Moonblast, which means it is going to be walled by fire types. Talonflame has farmed up quite a bit of energy. I'm going to let this through as I can survive a Flame Charge or a Fly. It is going to be the Fly. I'm farming up, and I'm really hoping that this Body Slam will be enough to knock out, but unfortunately, it is just not enough to KO. However, this should set up a Psycho Cut farm down for my Shadow Cresselia. So I'm going to send in Shadow Cresselia. In the back is Skeledirge, and this is a problem. My energy is completely walled here. I'm going to be firing off this Moonblast. Moonblast will connect, and here's actually a situation where being the Shadow Cresselia is going to help, because that Shadow Moonblast does quite a bit to the Skeledirge. Skeledirge will go for the Disarming Voice. I'm now going to go for a Grass Knot bait. Grass Knot would still come pretty close to knocking out here. I'm just trying to save whatever energy that I possibly can. I think I can survive a Disarming Voice, so I'm going to call it. It is the Disarming Voice. I can make the Moonblast, and this will guaranteed KO. If the Talonflame is in 2 Psycho Cut range, I can win the game. In comes the Talonflame. I get the Psycho Cut down, and Cresselia with Moonblast versus a double fire backline. I'm still able to take the win. We get a dream lead in the next match, Annihilate versus Vigoroth. Opponent save switches into Shadow for Alligator. I'm going to Night Slash to force a shield, and now I can bring in Lickitung. Lickitung is able to absorb 2 Shadow Hydro Cannons. They do a massive amount of damage, but the nice thing is Lickitung is there's no pressure for the opponent to be able to farm down. So I can very comfortably farm up 9 licks here, and then go for the Body Slam right before they make their 3rd Hydro. They're low enough that a Body Slam will be able to knock out, and now I can potentially make a move versus their Vigoroth. In comes the Vigoroth. I'm just able to make the Body Slam. Looks like that might have been new mechanic. I'm going to bring in Annihilate. In the back is a Shadow Gligar. Switch Clock's not yet up, so I'm forced to fire off the Night Slash just to burn the Switch Clock. Night Slash will connect, and this is already Grass Knot range. Since it is the Shadow Cresselia, you're going to be taking quite a bit more damage from these moves, but in exchange, you're going to be outputting more damage as well. So throughout the course of these battles, it'll be interesting to see what battles being Shadow helps it in versus what battles the Shadow ends up being a liability. In this instance, I know that I can survive a dig. However, a dig would do more than a Body Slam, so this is where I need to use the shield. They bait with the Aerial Ace, trying to make it to another move, but unfortunately not able to get there. Grass Knot will secure the knockout. Back in comes the Vigoroth, and this will be a pretty decent test. How much damage does this Moonblast do, and how much damage do the Body Slams do in return? I didn't get the greatest IV Shadow Cresselia. That Moonblast does quite a significant amount of damage. Like from this health, can I tank 2 Body Slams? It looks like it's going to be very, very close. And my Cresselia didn't turn out too great. The Body Slam does not KO. It's a simultaneous knockout. And with Annihilate alive, I'm able to take the win. Speaking of Annihilate, we have the Battle of Annihilate in the next match. I'm looking to farm up to the Shadow Ball, and I will go for the Night Slash bait. If they call it, things could get uncomfortable, and they call the bait. What a play by my opponent. Oh my goodness. I'm going to commit the shield. They full send the Shadow Ball, and maybe there's still a chance. I will fire off another Night Slash bait. They already know shielded 1. This time, they are going to shield. I will farm up, switch into the Lickitung, and catch what will hopefully be a Shadow Ball. And it is. That's a massive catch, and that puts me back into the game. Annihilate is going to bank a Night Slash, send in Dugong, so the opponent, whatever they have in the back, is core broken by a Lickitung up energy. Power Whip will connect. That does substantial damage to the Dugong. I survive an Icy Wind or a Drill Run here. Drill Run will do slightly more damage. Icy Wind, of course, comes with the debuff. They go for the Drill Run. They are looking for damage, and that damage is actually quite helpful for them. as this Power Whip is going to be able to pick up the knockout, but now I'm in counter down range for their Annihilate. I don't want to concede this farm down, so if they bring in the Annihilate, I'm actually going to switch out and snipe with the Night Slash, and now if they want this energy, they're forced to burn the final shield. They're going to let this go. In the back is a normal for Alligator, and this is one matchup that I'm very interested to see. Normal for Alligator versus the Shadow Cresselia. I do know that being Shadow Grass Knot is going to do substantially more damage here than it typically would, but if they have Crunch and they farmed up to it, this could get uncomfortable. Let's see the damage here. Crunch into Cresselia, massive damage. They get the defense drop. Can I survive this Shadow Claw? That's what this game's going to come down to. My health rapidly diminishing. The Grass Knot gets the shield, and I live the Shadow Claw on 1 HP. So that Gator matchup, if you're the Shadow Cresselia, can get a lot more uncomfortable, just purely off the fact that you are a lot more frail. We move to the next match, Annihilate versus Cresselia. I go for the catch on a Lickitung, but the opponent waits the turn, holding onto their energy, and in comes Guzzlord. This is a really rough turn of events for me. I really wanted to try and catch that energy, and therefore potentially set my Annihilate up in an advantageous position. But now, my Lickitung save switch was hard punished by a Guzzlord, and things are honestly not looking amazing. They have so much energy stored on that Cresselia, and that energy is going to output quite a bit of damage, even onto my own Cress. The good news for me is I make a slam, and if they want this energy, they're going to have to shield. They are going to shield. Switch clock will be up soon, so I switch into the Annihilate, and I'm going to go for a combo play with the Night Slash to try and force the final shield, and I get the final shield. The counter goes through. It will not KO, but it will get them low. They go for the Brutal Swing. That does a ton of damage. In the back, they have Lickitung, and this, honestly, I feel is not a game that I can win. I get the Night Slash. I get a boost, but unfortunately, that doesn't help me. I don't even get a counter off. In comes the Shadow Cresselia. Well, this will be another good case study here. We're going to get to see how much damage Moonblast does from the Shadow Cresselia. Right off the bat, Body Slam does a lot. Like, this matchup goes substantially faster as the Shadow Cresselia. The Moonblast will do quite a bit. I'm going to send in Lickitung. I'm going to go for a shield and a farm down. Opponent's only going to get to one move here. They go for the Power Whip, as they are only getting to one move. I'm going to get this farm down. In comes Cresselia, and they actually save their Lickitung on 1 HP, and I will fire off the Slam. The Slam connects. It's a CMP tie, and that honestly worked out pretty well for me, as they end up having to waste a Grass Knot, and now I can bring back in my own Cresselia, but unfortunately, I'm down energy and I'm down health. The writing is absolutely on the wall for this one. The Moonblast connects. That's just too much damage. I can't get enough moves to take the win, so I'm just getting farmed down. I get a much better lead in the next match, Annihilate versus Lickitung. You may notice that my Annihilate has very strange IVs, and that is very intentional. I'm running what's called a Slayer Annihilate specifically because it does allow me to flip most Lickitung matchups. Typically, Lickitung, if you're running a standard Annihilate, wins the ones with a Body Slam bait into a Power Whip. But my Annihilate is so attack weighted that I can actually just shield a Power Whip and counter down, or even shield a Body Slam, and they're not going to be able to make it to a Power Whip. So in this instance, they're going to bring in an Annihilate. I'm able to successfully grab a shield with my Night Slash bait. I send in Lickitung, and I'm immediately met with Vigoroth. This is not a terrific spot for me to be in. However, I still think, even though this mid-game matchup looks quite bad, I still think that I'm in a winning position. They don't have a lot of energy on their Annihilate, and I'm going to be able to get some nice value out of the Lickitung in terms of setting up a beautiful farm down for my Annihilate. My Annihilate has more energy than theirs. If I can just survive a Rock Slide, which shouldn't be a problem, as Annihilate is the hardest Vigoroth counter in the game, so I can tank the Rock Slide and leave with a Shadow Ball, and this game is over. Because if they don't shield the Shadow Ball, they get knocked out, and if they shield it, then I can just Moonblast them with the Shadow Cresselia. So I can bring in Shadow Cresselia. Opponent would have to make a Night Slash bait into a Shadow Ball. This matchup is a lot more uncomfortable as the Cresselia, because a Shadow Ball plus a couple counters can actually potentially pick up a knockout. Moonblast will be able to deliver the KO, and I'm able to take the win. We see a decent lead in the next match, Annihilate versus Deoxys. Even though Deoxys does have Psycho Boost, which can hit for super effective damage, you typically prefer to be the Annihilate in this matchup. I build up to the Shadow Ball, bait with the Night Slash, opponent calls the bait, so I gotta return the favor and actually go for a catch of the Psycho Boost onto Lickitung. Deoxys staying in, banking a ton of energy, banking double Psycho Boost, and in comes Obstagoon. Obstagoon, a Pokemon that I'd much rather see on any Pokemon but Lickitung, as Cresselia is going to have a winning matchup against it, as Shadow Moonblast would add up quite significantly, and of course Annihilate would absolutely crush it. My Lickitung, I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to one final move. It looks like I will be able to get one final move, my opponent actually stopping attacking, specifically to try and limit the amount of farm Annihilate can get. In comes Annihilate, they're only getting one move, so I'm going to let this through. Obstagoon goes for a resisted Hyper Beam, and that does so much damage. In the back is a Shadow Drapion, and I make a massive misplay. I should not have switched there. Honestly, I was just spamming the switch button because, as you see at the time of recording, it is very late at night. My opponent makes a very nice catch onto the Deoxys, catching the Moonblast. They did have 10 counters of energy stored on that Deoxys, so they're able to effectively neutralize my Moonblast, but they lose quite a bit of their energy in the process. I'm just going to leave it all up to my Annihilate. My Annihilate, it looks like I can't counter down before I would make it to 3 Night Slashes, so the win con is going to be to go for triple Night Slash. So I'm going to fire off the Night Slash. Whether I get a boost or not is not going to impact if I win this game. And I actually get the boost. Unfortunately, this is a boost that I do not need because, again, I'm not going to be able to counter down. It's all about just getting to 3 Night Slashes, and I'm able to get there. And with the boost or without the boost, the counters plus the Night Slash would have been enough to KO. And we're able to take the win. Oh no, the Vigoroth lead returns in the next match, and that's just the dream if you are running Annihilate. They save switch into Goodra. I'm going to bluff an Ice Punch here. They end up committing a shield, and now I can send in Shadow Cresselia. This Goodra's farming up a lot of energy. That has me worried about a Draco Meteor, so I am going to respect it, and I'm so happy I did. That Draco Meteor would have shredded my poor Cresselia. Oh my goodness. I'm going to be able to pick up the knockout with the Moonblast, and they bring in Shadow Typhlosion. This is another situation, like, against these matchups where Moonblast is resisted, being Shadow is really nice, because Shadow Moonblast would actually inflict a ton of damage to Typhlosion. Typhlosion is forced to shield, and look at the Psycho Cut damage. That's already lost like a third of its HP purely off of Psycho Cuts, and that is not a powerful move. Opponent tries to go for a potential catch there onto the Vigoroth. It's very tough to try and go for catches when you have a 5-turn move, so unfortunately they don't get it. And now, as someone who loves running Vigoroth, this does pain me dearly. Vigoroth getting fully countered down by the Annihilate. My energy forces their hand. They're forced to throw their move, and I have a Body Slam loaded on my Lickitung, so I can bring in the Lickitung. Game stutters a little bit there, but it's not going to matter. I can just fire off the Body Slam, knock out the Shadow Typhlosion, and that game will end in victory. We've got a Battle of Annihilate for the next match, Annihilate versus Annihilate. Another really nice thing about running these Slayers is you almost always win CMP in the mirror, but this opponent is actually running an even more attack-weighted Slayer than me. I almost never lose CMP in the Annihilate mirror, ever. So this, honestly, was a massive, massive surprise. If my opponent is going to play out the twos, my plan here is I'm going to double shield, always bait, and then catch their Shadow Ball onto Lickitung. That way I save my Shadow Ball for later on. So I will be firing off this Night Slash bait. They end up shielding. I'm going to throw 5 counters and get the catch onto the Lickitung. Opponent had the same idea, a simultaneous switch into Lantern. Lantern, unfortunately, I mean, this is still a pretty solid matchup for Lickitung, but I would have much rather gotten that catch. That switch out into Lantern was a pretty decent play by my opponent, as it covered for me throwing my move, and it also covered for me trying to catch. So overall, pretty nice read by my opponent. I go for the slam here, really needing this to KO, and they live on 1 HP. That is spectacularly bad. Thunderbolt barely doesn't KO, but now my opponent can get farm. They bring in Jellicent, and this is really rough. I send in Annihilate. I'm firing off the Shadow Ball. Didn't really want to bring in Shadow Cresselia, but unfortunately here, I can't get the farm down. I end up switching and catching, but realistically, whether I caught this move or not, the game was over. Even if I don't catch, my opponent can just bring in Annihilate, and Annihilate with a ball loaded makes a Night Slash plus a ball before I can make it to a Grass Knot. So either way, unfortunately, this game is going to be over for me. They're going to fire off the Night Slash. The Night Slash, wait, it doesn't KO. Hold on, can I win this? If my Night Slash KOs and a counter knocks out the Jellicent, but the Jellicent lives on 1 HP, I thought it was doomed. Suddenly, there was a brief moment of hope, but unfortunately, it was dashed. Hopping into the final match, and Annihilate is back to bullying Vigoroth. Vigoroth, I am so sorry. It's going to be the Feraligatr save switch, and this team that my opponent is running, I actually faced it twice in the video, is a team that I featured. It's a really, really strong climbing team, but unfortunately the team that I happen to be using with the Shadow Cresselia does really, really well against it, because Lickitung is one of the few things that's very good at neutralizing a Feraligatr save switch. Feraligatr, unfortunately, not going to be able to make that third Hydro, as Body Slam will pick up the knockout. Opponent can send back in the Vigoroth. At this point, Vigoroth, it's basically just best used as a damage sponge. I don't get the Body Slam this time around, but I am going to wait my timer. And they're going to send in the Shadow Gligar. And now we'll get to see the Gligar is up energy, but it is down a shield. And let's see what kind of damage Shadow Cresselia can do in this matchup. Keep in mind, this is a slightly attack-weighted Shadow Cresselia, but I think having information about these matchups will be very valuable, especially considering we have the World Championships coming up. So the Moonblast does a lot there. And one thing that is interesting about Shadow Cresselia that we're going to see is if you land the Moonblast in this matchup, and granted, I don't know if this is just because I have an attack-weighted one, you can Psycho Cut down, which is pretty cool. They make the dig, it does not knock out, and I have 100 energy versus this Vigoroth. So I get to fire off the Grass Knot. After they no-shielded the first, I should have just switched into the Annihilate, but whether I did or not, the game will be over, because they can shield, but I can just bring back in the Annihilate, and even a half-health Annihilate is not something Vigoroth is able to beat. Vigoroth will go for the Rock Slide, I counter it into Night Slash range, and I definitely got some pretty good lead luck throughout the course of these battles. But overall, I did have some nice results with the team. And now some final thoughts on Shadow Cresselia and its Open Great League viability. First off, I do think that at best we are probably talking about a side grade. And to be honest, I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing. We know the regular Cresselia is easily a top 10 Pokemon in the Open Great League, so having something that's a side grade at best isn't honestly the worst thing in the world. Where Cresselia is going to struggle a bit more as the Shadow is in the 2-shield, and this is due to the fact that it's losing quite a bit of bulk and not getting as much damage in return. There can be some matchups where it can be helpful, for example, versus the Sableye matchup, the extra Moonblast damage can actually make a decent amount of difference, but in the 2-shield, the Shadow can end up dropping some type advantage matchups, like going up against Lantern, for example, which typically, if you're running Cresselia, you're using it to try and core break fighting plus water teams, so that can be a bit of a concern. So for those who don't have a Great League Cresselia, this is a decent opportunity to get one, because of course catching it is going to ensure that it's Great League eligible. However, I don't think it's a must-have Pokemon by any means. There could be some cup in the future where it is ending up going to be preferred, but for the time being, I think the regular is going to be slightly favored overall as far as the Open Great League goes. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support you guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.